This one has 5 different levels. Student learning goals are clear, focused on the intended learning, and communicated so all students understand the criteria for success. When you read that or when you hear that, what are some things that jump out at you?
I think the kids need to know the why. I think that's been a huge shift this year in our language as a building. I'm sure that's echoed throughout the district, but just telling them this is why we're doing it. I think the buy-in's a lot better, the focus is a lot better for those quick, skill sessions if they know what it leads into. That's something I found in the past. A lot of kids could do these isolated skills for me pretty well because it was, drilled into them. It was routine, they got it. But then when we did the application piece, they didn't necessarily apply their learning, and I think a lot of that was because they didn't understand the isolated skills built up to that application piece and pulling it all together. So that's been something that I've tried to get better at with at least my language part of it, like in my verbal directions or setting the stage for the lesson or what have you. But I'm wondering if that's actually been echoed throughout the lesson then with how I've built it up.
So, and that's something I've definitely noticed when I've been in here. You're very aware of teaching those learning objectives to the kids and making sure you state the I can statements before the lessons. But it sounds like it's that transfer. Are you certain that that's being transferred to what they're doing each day? Okay. All right, so let's look at this top layer. This one has the 5 different levels of implementation. So educator does not articulate learning goals or success criteria to students. I think we can say that that's definitely the does not, when we know for certain that you are articulating those goals. Level 4 can articulate learning goals to students in student-friendly language.
I think I can do that, definitely.
Yep, so this one for sure. Educator occasionally communicates both learning goals and success criteria to students in a student-friendly language. Talk to me about what the difference is between 3 and 4 to you.
Well, it's actually giving them that success criteria and showing them, okay, this is how you're going to show me you can do this, or this is what I'm looking for in order to see if you are understanding what I'm asking you to do, instead of just telling them this is the skill we're working on.
So really connecting it to what an outcome might look like. Not saying you're forced into this outcome, but this is what I might look for. This is what you might be able to do. So that's that success criteria. So if we come up to a level 2, educator occasionally communicates learning goals, success criteria, and models of quality work to students in student-friendly language. What would you say the difference is between a level 2 to a level 3?
Throwing in then, this is what it looks like. So you're giving them that action of this is what I'm looking for, and then you're giving them maybe even a visual display of this is what it looks like. And I always think back when I see those models of quality work, that writing piece where you can be like, this is a 4 or whatever you want to put on there. We had an anchor chart earlier on just coloring at the beginning of the year, like what is a smiley face coloring, what is a okay face, what is a frowny face, just to give them that quality of work. But I don't always throw in those models. So that's kind of what stood out on 2.
And then level 1 would be educator regularly communicates learning goals, success criteria, and models of quality work to students in student-friendly language. The difference there being probably the regularly to occasionally. So what about this level? Where are you seeing yourself?
I would say I'm somewhere either 2 or 3. I know I do talk, I'm very regular with learning goals, and I would say success criteria are, if you and I would have a conversation, then I'd be really on it the next lesson, or maybe the next series of lessons. That probably teeters on if I'm really good at that or not on a regular occasion. The models of quality work, I know we've done a couple of examples of that throughout the year, but I'm not consistent with that. So for first rating, I would probably give myself a 3 just to make sure that I'm conscious of that and that I think I could grow in that if I'm really honest about it.
Okay. Well, let's look at the other 2 pieces of this attribute, and then we can give an overall for this one, and then maybe look at ways that it might look differently in your classroom if you were to move up the scale.
Okay.
All right, so that level 3 of this next part of the attribute, educator never facilitates student understandings or development of success criteria.
Okay, so how do those fit together, the top and the bottom? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the first time you're hearing about success criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're never facilitating it, shouldn't that be around 4?
Well, and I asked that question. That's a good question. Why some of these are blank, and it just basically is there's only 3 different levels of implementation here.
So it doesn't necessarily match up with the
Nope.
one above it. Okay.
No, it's
okay.
maybe high, middle, low. I would look
Gotcha.
at it that rather than a
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Gotcha. And I was just trying to match up like
Mhm.
all 3 of these should be looking
Right.
alike.
Like
okay.
if I'm at a level 3 here, maybe I'll be at a level 3 here. It doesn't necessarily turn out that
Gotcha.
way. That's
Okay.
a great question.
Okay, I got it.
So when I look at this first level and this second level, it sounds a lot alike.
Mm-hmm.
Success criteria for this top level
Mm-hmm.
might be introducing and exposing. What's the difference for this level? There's a word in there that might show that.
The development of success criteria.
And then making sure those students understand
Yeah.
that success criteria.
And just saying it like I can say those things, but then I'm not checking
Yeah.
for understanding of, okay, I'm saying it, are you understanding? If not, then I need to reword
That's
something.
exactly
I need
right.
to show something different.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and then this one says educator never facilitates
Mhm.
that and makes sure that those students are understanding those,
Mhm.
stopping for a check for understanding. So that would be that level 3. Level 2 would be occasionally, and it's the same thing, facilitating
Mhm.
that student understanding. And then level 1 would be regularly
Mhm.
stops to check for that student understanding. So which
I
one
would
do you
think I'm occasionally doing that.
Okay,
Probably not as much as I'd like, so that's
Okay.
another thing
all right.
to focus on.
And then this last level of this attribute for learning goals and things like that, the level 4, the lowest degree, I guess, of implementation, students are not able to explain what learning is expected. The next one, students can explain the learning for the classroom, but are not able to explain what success looks like.
Okay.
Then the next level, higher degree of implementation, most students can explain the learning goals, criteria for success, and models of quality work, and use them to monitor their own learning. And then the top highest degree of implementation, all students can explain the learning goals, criteria for success, and models of quality work, to use them to monitor their own learning. So obviously progresses pretty
Mhm.
quickly.
And I think where I need to focus, I think my kids can recite the I can statements at this point on each day. I would be interested to see this if you would just pull randomly, okay, what are you guys doing today? Could they say an I can statement? Because I think we talk about it regularly. But could they explain then what that looks like within a lesson, or how they use that to get an end product, or anything like that? So I think I'm over here on level 3 because I'm not quite sure kids are able to explain then what that looks like, what that I can put into action actually would do for them.
Yeah. So the difference being explaining,
Yeah.
as opposed to they're not able to explain here. They can explain it, but they might not be able to
Yeah.
transfer what that might look like.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's that transfer piece that I really want to hone in on.
Okay. So overall, do you think, what do we want to give for a
I'd probably
mark?
give a 3.
Okay, so let's do a 3 for this attribute. So when you think about overall, and I know you've talked a lot about goal setting and wanting that to be something that you focus more to make it like a living goal instead of a shelf goal that we come out 3 times a year and look at. When we think about all of the different criteria included in this, what would it look like? What would your students be doing? What would you be doing differently to move farther up with the levels of implementation?
Well, and what I'm thinking with the goal setting is making the bulletin board more of a goal setting thing. And I'm a ways away from this. But having all of the I can statements and just saying which I can statement do you want to focus on? Because then it's limiting their focus a little bit to just these are our priorities. So they get to choose whatever I can statement they want. Then after this, and I'm just kind of now thinking of this, but then having, okay, this is our I can statement. And then maybe having in there the words like, how am I going to practice this? and talk about, well, what are you going to be able to do? So if you take one of ours, I don't know, say my Jollyphonic sounds. So if they pick that as their I can statement goal that they want to work on, so how are you going to work on that? Okay, when I hear a word, I'm going to think of all the sounds in the word. I'm going to, segment those sounds. If I don't know them, what are you going to use? Well, a resource in the room would be your Jollyphonics posters, and we would talk about that being in the room. If they're at home, their flashcards would be a resource. And then I think one thing from one of the goal setting conversations I had with a kid was, where are times in our day that you do these things? When can you practice them? Because I noticed every time we came to the carpet, this kid was very distracted, didn't participate with us, so I was always trying to include them in. And a lot of times at the beginning of the year, it was the Jollyphonic sounds. So we talked about, hey, when we're doing those songs, that's when we're practicing the sounds. So you should be singing that song with us so you can start hearing, that song in your head when you're thinking about this sound. And that all of a sudden changed how he was at the carpet during Jollyphonics, because he was told, you need to do this because it's working on your sounds. So I think having that, where are times in my day that I can do this, and point out then the home connection with that, because I think a lot of kids shut that off when they leave here. So talking about, okay, during writer's workshop, we're doing that. During guided reading, when we're, decoding new words, we're doing that. During word work, during workstations, we're doing that. What are you doing at home? Well, I'm going to start studying my flashcards. That'd be a brilliant idea,
Right.
and just getting that, plant that seed a little bit more too. And then maybe they would start talking about those action steps a little bit more than just, this is my I can statement.
Well, and it sounds to me like it's more pre-teaching what it looks like. So the kids can then transfer that to, how's that going to look for me to be able to do that. So whether it's, what am I going to do at home? What am I going to do at school? But more specifically, where is that going to be at school? What's that going to look like for me to practice that skill at school?
And I think what I need to get better at is telling them more and more, like, once we have these skills, under control, this is what it's going to make it able for you to do. Like, if you know your sounds, you can write words. If you can write words, you can write a sentence, and you could write a letter to a friend. Or you could put your writing up in the hallway, and everyone can be able to read it then. So I think they get motivated by those things, and I need to get better at telling them, this is why we're doing it, because if you put that all together, this can be your end result,
You're very deliberate about making sure the I can statement is there, but maybe being more deliberate about that transfer. Yeah, great goal.
It's a great goal. We got to put it in action.
Yeah, you're right.